So who here thinks they might have startup pitching in their future? You think you might pitch someone for money to sell your thing? I see Gene back there. Got a few hands up. Okay, so for the rest of y'all, you're just learning things for the benefit of everyone else and to learn how this ecosystem, this weird investor, venture capital kind of semi-broken thing works. So let's see if I can push the right button. In 2016, I was at the racetrack, and I was super excited and super nervous because in front of me was 7 venture capitalist pitches. I'd been working on a company for 8 years, pouring my blood, sweat, and tears into it, and we'd kind of hit a growth point we were happy with. We were like, all right, we need to raise some more money to keep this going. And I'd prepared this pitch, and I was with my CEO, and we were excited. We went and pitched all day, and got a lot of smiles and a lot of very kind questions, and we got no money. We got no follow-ups, nothing happened. And I really didn't understand why. We were a good company, we were growing, we had used our money responsibly, and that's what we kind of pitched, but that didn't work. I have since learned that I was doing it totally wrong. So I'm not an expert, but I'm at least way better than I was 2 years ago, so I'm gonna try to share what I've learned in the last couple of years. I got a advisor around pitching, and that helped us sell the company in 2017. And then this last year, I raised $500,000 for my startup. So I've had a little baby version of success. So I feel good about this momentum. I pitched 30 folks. I did 60 deliveries of the pitch to get 9 yeses, which is what was the success. Also, I pitched last year, like a year ago at this thing too. So done some pitching. So I'm talking specifically about pitching to angels and micro VCs and seed stage VCs. The thing I've learned is it's very stage specific. So I'm going to be talking about my experience. So these are early stage pitches where you're pitching on I don't have a $1 billion thing yet. I have an idea for a $1 billion thing. So meta advice about getting advice on this topic is you will read so much stuff and it will be completely contradictory and you're like, what are these people crazy? Are they on different universes? And the answer is, yeah, they are. So I built a pitch about 18 months ago, and I was getting all the advice from all the people I talked to that have raised money. And I would take the pitch in, and they would I would sit down with this person who's raised tens of millions of dollars, and he would tell me something that was the exact opposite of the last person I talked to that had raised tens of millions of dollars. It's you need LTV, you need your LTV CAC ratio, and you really need this graph and not that other graph. And I was like, what is going on? So the meta advice is, all of the advice is stage appropriate. So the advice that's good for pitching at pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, it's different advice. So you got to ask, why is that good advice for my stage? And it's also team appropriate. So if you're a founder and you sold your last company for $100 million, you're in a totally different track. Your advice is very different. The things that you should do are different. And the people that write the Medium posts, they're often the people that did that $100 million, billion-dollar last startup. So they're playing a different game than probably we're playing. So ask about the context for your advice. So the thing that is constant, so the advice and the context changes. What's constant is growth. If you're pitching the venture capitalist angels, they're there for growth. They're not there for efficient use of your resources. If they wanted efficient uses of resources, they would invest in Vanguard 500 index funds, and they're very efficient. They want growth. They want a graph that goes up and to the right and then keeps going to the right. So that's your conversation, is about growth, and about growth that's going to keep going. So growth that doesn't have a big cap. You want a graph like this. You can have your own version, but you need a graph that goes up and to the right and has a curve. That's percentage compounding growth. So the other constant, other than growth, is you're going to be persuading folks. You're going to be persuading folks that are busy. They have lots of reasons to not care about your particular thing. They got a lot going in their lives. The 2 tools we have at our disposal are anecdotes, so stories, and data. There's a lot of engineers in this room. We are prone to want to tell the data story. That's the wrong story. It's the anecdotes that are successful. The data is what people use after you've convinced someone with a story and they feel good, they will then point to your data as the reason they feel that way. But if you just have the data, the thing doesn't work. And I've learned this the hard way several times. There's versions of my pitches without story that people don't listen to, and versions with stories. So I've told at least 2 stories so far. I've attempted to tell 2 stories. I'm trying to practice what I preach. I'm going to talk about the process now. So this is, you're pitching, but that's just one part. How did you get there? And then what do you do afterwards to make yourself successful? So step 0 is about sourcing. You cannot talk to yourself. There needs to be another human on the other side of the video conference or the table. So how do you get that person in front of you? I don't know who said this, but if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, sometimes you get money. This applies really well to investment. The trick here is you want to ask for advice way before you need money. So in my specific case, nobody that invested in my company, everyone who invested in my company had been following me and talking to me for at least 9 months. They'd seen my progress. They'd seen the obstacles we'd overcome. Like that's there's no trick to investing, or to fundraising, but it's have those conversations early so people can see your progress. So how do you do this? By finding before you're ready, way before you're ready to raise money, you find previous investors. So there's all this like tech press, like look at TechPoint, find people who have been in announcements that have invested in other companies. You're unlikely to be the person that really convinces someone to invest for the first time. You're looking for someone who's done it before. That's way easier as a first-time founder. So find their names, and it really is as easy as like put them on a Trello board. I had a Trello board with like 6 steps. It's like, these are some investors. These are the ones I've emailed. These are the ones that I'm following up with. These are the ones I have a meeting set with. It's like a process, just like your deploy board with like reviewing code, Trello cards all the way down. You can just straight up email these folks. If you have a concise email that says like, hey, I'm solving this problem, we have this traction, I'd love your advice. Can we have coffee? If you have a really short thing that they can reply from their phone, these are mostly nice people that want to help the ecosystem. They're very busy people. So if you ask them a question that requires them to think or like not type it out with their thumbs, they will probably not email you back. But if you do give them something that's easy for them to say yes to, they often will, surprisingly will. Maybe you have to follow up a couple times and like look for a good excuse, but like you can cold email them. If that doesn't work, then you can find people to introduce you. That's a whole other game, but cold emailing works, especially in Indiana. Like there's a community here of people that want to help you. So now that I've got these folks that are going to get coffee with me, now you ask advice. Genuinely ask for advice. There's a lot of things to know in fundraising. There's lots of things to know in building a company. Ask and then try to do some of those things. The great email is, remember 3 months ago when you told me to do this thing? Well, now I did it, and it was great. Like that's the type of company that investors want to invest in, like people that are coachable. So this is the hardest part, is following up. The number one tip I would give, other than starting early, is send a monthly email. It's like it can be about the anything, just some kind of monthly update. So you get credit for a monthly update. This is the most high leverage thing I do every month. The next step is, in that monthly update, pick one thing, whether it's like product downloads, app store reviews, number of like completed workflows in your software. Pick that number and then figure out how to make it go up and to the right, and then show that progress in your email. That puts you, in the top 5% of companies that are out there fundraising. This is, if you Google Saas funding Napkin, this will tell you, it's kind of some heuristics for what metrics you need to raise money at different stages in the process. There are kind of like, there's decent heuristics. You can say like, oh, okay, to raise seed funding, I need around 100,000 ARR. And there's some good resources out here, because you don't know it. You don't see 100 companies, but these investors do. So it kind of helps you get on their pattern recognition. So let's pretend that you've now done the actual hard work of building a company, getting customers, making them happy, and you've hit the milestone. So now it's time to actually do this pitch, which is the talk title. So I should talk about pitching a little bit, right? This is the least important part. All of the actual work was what you've done for the last 9 months, building a company, getting customers, updating people about your progress, telling the story. That's what actually matters. The pitch, if you've done that, is just like a thing that you have to not screw up. You have to project lack of incompetence. It's the other stuff that matters more. So this customer traction, that's the thing that wins everything. So if you've done the work in the last 9 months, 12 months, that's the number you want to talk about and show. That's the one people can't argue with. People can't say like, well, I don't think anyone's going to buy it. It's like, well, no, I've got 10 customers. That's the really thing you want to be doing. You can Google lots of things about, startup pitch deck. They'll all talk about problem, solution, team vision. The thing that I did too much is I talked too much about the product. I love products. I'm an engineer. I'm a product guy. That should be the smallest piece. Thank you. The traction tells the product story. The customer is using this thing, having results. That's how you tell the story. Investors they're typically not product people. They're not like, oh yeah, I see the future. And that's what they tell their friends whenever they cash the checks. I saw the future. They're often looking at the spreadsheets and looking like, oh, okay, these customers, they're buying your thing. I don't understand it, but they're buying it. So that's the thing I would focus on. And the other thing that tripped me up is the vision. So this is a thing that I got conflicting advice about, right? So someone would give you advice. They would say, you got to be laser focused. Startups die from indigestion, not exhaustion. It was a Paul Graham quote. You need to focus because if you chase everything, you'll die. You don't have enough resources to chase everything. So it's like, okay, laser focus. Then I put a slide deck together and they'd say like, your market's not really big enough. And I'm like, but I was laser focusing. And I'd switch the slide deck and I'd be like, okay, we are fixing hiring for the world. It's going to be huge. And they're like, well, I don't know if you can do all of that at once. I'm like, oh. So the line you have to thread is you are laser focused on a problem right now, and that's where you're getting your traction, but you're selling this huge vision. And it's a tough needle to walk, and I just say those exact words because I couldn't figure out a way to massage it. So I say we're laser focused on solving developer hiring for high growth scale ups. And in the future, we see expanding to adjacent roles with our buyer, and then switching to deeper into the hiring process. So that's the kind of which I think it makes sense to me now as I say it, but it was very frustrating when I was iterating through slides. So laser focused, huge vision. The secret to fundraising, other than putting in the work and building a business, which is kind of hard, is FOMO. Who knows what FOMO is? Fear of missing out. That's right. It is always better for an investor to wait and see. The only thing that gives you any leverage in this whole, you're selling your company, the only thing that gives you leverage in the sale is other investors and this one investor's fear of that other investor swooping in and taking up all the equity so that they don't have an opportunity. That's it. Other than in angel investors who are really excited about your problem and they maybe like you and your grandma and whatever, that fear of missing out, that's the only thing you have. So your goal is to create a situation where you maximize fear of missing out. And the only way you do this is by creating competition. So the recipe here is that Trello board that we created 9 months ago with 20 names on it of people who have made these investments before. We have figured out how to stage those conversations so that everyone's moving on at the same rate. And that at some point you're going to be like, all right, I've had 15 of these. People are responding to my emails. When I ask them for this stuff, they email it back. You're going to set a date. You're going to say, 60 days out. You'll say what month is it right now? I think we're January. So I could say you email all those people. You say March 15th. Are you able to make a decision by March 15th? And they'll probably say yeah, March 15th, okay. Or maybe they say yeah, could you give us March 30th? And you say, hey, everyone, new date's March 30th. So now everyone's on this same timeline. That way it gets to the end, and everyone's looking to, actually I want to buy another boat or whatever. So yeah, you can buy the boat. I think we'll be full by March 30th. I'd love to have you on the team. Actually having multiple people moving towards that end date is the only leverage you have. I'm going to say that again. The other things that were surprising to me, there's this thing called a soft circle. It's a made-up term that investors means. It means people that maybe will give you money, but they've like sort of committed. Your goal is to set a low target. Like if you want to raise $1 million, you go out to raise $700,000 because once you say, I'm raising $700,000, I have $600,000 committed, everything gets easy all of a sudden. People are like, oh, I'm going to put in the last 50. Or can you take 150? Can you take 200? So you set a lower target lower than you want. You have multiple people bidding, and then you can get to that 100. Whether if you set 100, 600 is pretty far away. So that's kind of counterintuitive. That was surprising to me. Once you get close to it, everything else gets easy. And that is everything I've learned about fundraising in the last 2.5 years.